Welcome to the Just Jim radio show. I'm Just Jim, Jim Toole. Just Jim came about sort of synchronistically or maybe even accidentally. I'm Reverend Jim, the pastor at Sarasota Center of Light, a spiritual center here in Sarasota. And people kept asking me, well, what would I call you? And I said, well, Just Jim. Started writing it on the blackboard during classes, and the next thing you know, it stuck. Because I'm really all about, practical spirituality or practical application of principles that can make a difference in your life. That's really what the show's about, bringing inspiration, information, a little bit of fun, ideas, concepts that open windows to see clearer, doors to be able to walk through easier, opportunities to be who we are more fully in our lives. We do that with different formats. Sometimes interviews, sometimes conversations, sometimes discussions with one or more people. Today, I'm going to be chatting. If you ask my wife, she'll tell you I can talk for 3 days without breathing. I really enjoy sharing. And when I say I enjoy sharing and I enjoy talking, it isn't about hearing myself speak. My life has been dedicated for over 4 decades to making a difference. In my life and others' lives, it's who I am, not what I do. So I'm really grateful to be here. I'm glad you're here with me. And we have an interesting show today. I like to listen to ideas from other people about topics that can be discussed or shared. And this one caught me off guard a bit when I heard it, and then as I looked at it closer, it was very interesting and intriguing to me. I hope it is to you. The title of this show is The Spiral of Metaphysical Thought. And it's literal. It's literal. It is about the symbol of the spiral and its symbolic meaning to the evolution of who we are. Now, there are a lot of references to the spiral. What will happen when somebody wants to use a symbol, they'll go back and look at the history of the symbol. And so this has been something that has been used in many cultures and many different views for a very, very long period of time. It's actually one of the oldest geometric shapes found throughout the ancient world. Petroglyphs of spirals date back to the Neolithic period. That's a long, long time ago. Yet ancient cultures throughout the world carved the same symbol with little or no communication with one another. It wasn't necessarily shared. It showed up in the awarenesses or consciousnesses of different cultures, countries, individuals, and gatherings of peoples that were in different times and different places. The spiral is absolutely fundamental in nature. I mean, just about everywhere you look, you're going to find it. I mean, not just in seashells, but you're going to find it in flowers, and the natural phenomena like whirlpools, hurricanes, tornadoes, galaxies. And it has become a powerful symbol for creation and growth. In New Mexico, the Sun Dagger Spiral is a 1,000-year-old celestial calendar used to track time by the way that moves. The tri-spiral, one of the oldest and most famous Irish megalithic symbols. That's a big word, isn't it? The tri-spiral, triple spiral, triskele, or a 3-spiral, dates back to 2500 to 3000 BC, found in Ireland. long, long time ago. Many scholars believe the spiral of life represents the cycle of life, death, rebirth. Others say a deeply mystical symbol represents the male, female, and child of the path of life. Another interpretation is the triple goddess. That's 3 spirals in a triangular shape together. Another interpretation of the triple spiral is that it represents eternal truth. The meaning of life is found in the harmony between the 3 dimensions of our existence. A lot of information here. The Celtic spiral represents evolution, motion, progress, continuous development. In terms of life or our evolution, in terms of spirituality, the expression of our spirit or of who we are from the very core of our being in the world, there's a couple of different views you can look at when it comes to the spiral. If you look at it from the point of the outside circle of the spiral, and the spiral starting at the point on the outside of it and turning inward to the point in the center, it's about bringing our view or our way of seeing things to the expansive, the unlimited, the eternal, the universe and beyond, and beginning to follow a path that we begin to identify who we are closer and closer as we're moving through the spiral closer to the center. We're beginning to recognize our part in the grand scheme of things. And the center point in that spiral represents us finding ourselves, us having self-realization, us recognizing our part in everything. I have a tendency to look at it from the other position. Carl Jung says it's an archetypal symbol that represents cosmic force. Whether you're starting from the outside, going to the center, or as I like to look at it, starting at the center and going out from there, then that is what I see this symbol of the spiral meaning and what it's all about. And so we are at center point within ourselves. We are at that place that represents the journey and change of life as it unfolds. And as we're starting from that center point, let's call it the origin of creation, the origin of who we are, we begin to evolve in those circular, and those circulars have so many different references, the cycles of life, patterns that we're in. The merry-go-round is only one circle, but you get my point, round and round. And each of those layers of the circle, of the spiral, end up being another part of our pathway that goes round and round, sort of like a labyrinth, or maybe the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz leading us to Oz, us discovering who we are. And the way that we discover ourselves is through that evolution of looking at what's happening. Each layer would represent a layer of, let's say, perception, how we see ourselves, something we would wrap around that center point of who we are to depict who we are in the world. Each of us are very uniquely, individually different and perfect at the same time. We don't always see ourselves or each other that way, and the world would be a better place if we did. And we're all on our individual and yet unified paths of discovery, exploration. And so these layers that wrap around that center point are how we see ourselves, and through them, how we see the world. Those layers from the center point out of the spiral also represent lessons. How often have we heard that? We are here to learn through the circumstances and situations of life. And life goes on and on and on. A good way to see the spiral. And we've all had the experience of, hold it a minute, lessons. Haven't I already learned this lesson? Lessons coming back, the same old thing happening again. And then we can get to beat ourselves up because we didn't learn it the first time. Well, a better way, or I believe a better way of looking at that, is that let's go back to when we were children. Let's go back to when we were younger in our life. We had a certain level of experience in life, and so we might have experienced something and handled it in a certain way. Interestingly enough, early in life, we would handle life almost in ignorance. Children don't have as much judgment of each other because they haven't developed it yet. But as we do, we only are able to learn as much as we are when we do. And so when something shows up in our life when we're younger, we may handle it one way, and then later in life, because we've learned more, experienced more, or, had some more lessons, we deal with it different. Well, on a spiritual or consciousness level, it's the same thing. We will have addressed, even purposefully looked at, certain situations that are going on in our lives. Fears we might have, doubts we might have, insecurities, patterns in relationships, in the way that we show up in our lives. And then we'll say, oh, it's showed up again. I didn't learn it before. Well, yes, you learned whatever you did that you could, and you responded or dealt with it as best you could when you did. Now you've actually expanded and elevated your awareness. You've actually grown, and you've come to a place where you are able to look at another level of that lesson. And so the spiral isn't flat. It's multi-leveled. So as you begin to move through it, as you raise your awareness or your vibration, as you increase your illumination or your light, so to speak, you can see it differently. You can experience it differently. You can respond to it differently. So that's what we're doing as we're making our way. We're moving through these different levels and layers of our being and seeing it for what it is, just slightly differently. It might just be subtly. It might be very powerfully impacted. It might, in that spiral or that level of the spiral, be something very pertinent to whatever's going on right then and there. We're trying to accomplish this or achieve that. So that lesson, that cycle or that part of life is there to bring our attention to a place that we need to reinforce or heal or release or open into in a different way. And so this spiral never stops, that's for sure. It continues on. And although it may feel like we're going in circles, we are constantly expanding. And if you look at it from a three-dimensional point of view, we're also constantly elevating. Each time that we evolve in any way, we're opening even more fully, we're having more clarity,